This story played out in the newspapers as a real mystery serial, not solved for many months, intrigue, questions constantly being asked and not answered. And it involved Lincoln. Lincoln? Former president of the United States, shot in Ford's Theater and died later, has his own memorial in Washington, D.C., etc., etc., etc. No, but this Lincoln was said to be a relative. Let's say, for the record, distant relative. His name? Warren J. Lincoln. Sounds like he could have been a rap star in today's age. Well, intrigue us, nameless narrator. Okay, will do, my butter beans. It's May 1st, 1923, Aurora, Illinois, home of Wayne's World, though not for many years. We're already well into some intrigue as the story starts. One Warren Lincoln, former attorney and a horticulturist, that's a flower and plant person, has disappeared. Tied to that disappearance is some talk of murder. Warren's son, John, age 20, was taken in for questioning by the police. Warren's wife, Lena, and her brother, Byron Shoup, are seemingly unavailable as they too are missing. Warren's disappearance was discovered just the day before by his brother, Edward. Edward went to Warren's house to look for him, found his brother's nightshirt and a woman's glove in a well. His house had been torn apart. Near to the house, a pool of blood and some shoe prints from a woman's shoe in a flower bed. Near that blood pool was a club stained with blood and a flask of alcohol. Between the house and the well, papers were scattered everywhere. What is noted is that Warren had started divorce proceedings against his wife. And that's when the wife and her brother disappeared. Reports stated that it was believed she had gone to Seattle. So why bother with John the son? Well, there were reports that Warren's life was insured for $10,000 and that he had just recently made his son the beneficiary instead of his wife. Young John Lincoln was asked about his whereabouts, and he said that the night of the disappearance he had been visiting his girlfriend in a neighboring town. The girlfriend backed up his story. Now, here come the theories because you have to start somewhere, right? Sheriff William E. Orr put out his theory early on that Warren had been murdered and his body had been tossed into the Fox River. Sheriff Orr ordered that the river be dragged because he very much believed he would find a body there. He believed that the women's clothes around Warren's house had been planted by the wrongdoers, one woman and two men, to lend an air of scandal to the scene. In addition to the things found around the house and the ransacking within the house, of note were some scattered business cards that bore the name of a private detective. May 2nd, 1923. Searches continue today for Warren. Theories are slaying and now kidnapping. The blood smears found in the house, on a club, and on Warren's nightshirt were analyzed by chemists to indeed be human blood. Why was that in question? Because apparently 4 innocent chickens found in their pen on the property had had their throats slashed, so it was thought that perhaps the blood had been theirs. Warren's body is still being sought near the Fox River, and there is no clue as to where Lena and her brother are. Apparently, at one point, Warren had filed a $10,000 damage suit against his brother-in-law, Byron. Lena's family has not heard from her since January. You may want to put a pushpin on that info. Not literally, but take note of that in your brain case. The couple's housekeeper testified that clothing belonging to Lena had disappeared the same night that Warren had vanished. May 3rd, 1923. Let's recap, shall we? Warren went to bed on a Sunday night. His bed was empty Monday morning. He was gone, the house was in shambles, and there were apparently some indications that a body had been dragged through the open bedroom window. The club, which was thought to have possibly caused death, was found in a greenhouse 300 feet from the house. Remember, Warren was a horticulturist. A whiskey bottle was near the club. Both items were bloodstained. Nightshirt, nightcap, and a woman's glove were fished out of a well. In addition to Lena and Byron being sought, a sandy-haired stranger who had been seen around the greenhouse was being looked for. Lena and Warren were married in 1912, and apparently the last few years of the marriage had not been peaceful. They separated in January. She apparently threatened him if he tried to sue her for a divorce. He filed a suit charging her with cruelty. Byron, again her brother, lived with the pair and allegedly threatened to beat Warren up if he tried to divorce Lena. And this sandy-haired stranger, John, Warren's son, brought him up as having seen him around the greenhouse. So was the woman's glove Lena's? No. A neighbor girl who took care of the house said it was hers, as she had accidentally left it there Saturday night, the night before the ruckus started. Another paper said it was Lena's, so here we go again with the different news accounts. So let's go back to that private detective's card that had been found, shall we? It was belonging to one Milo Durand, private detective, criminal tracing's a specialty. Detectives are looking for this person. Detectives are also looking for copies of letters that John, the son, said Warren had written to siblings of his wife asking them to help him get his wife back home. The letters also were said to have made some accusations towards Byron, the brother-in-law. John had said the letter copies should be with his father's papers, but they were not found anywhere, even where some papers had been left outside. And now they're looking for an allegedly missing small hand axe that could have been used in the alleged slaying. May 4th. Now investigators are looking a little closer at the few clues that were found on the property. The bloody nightshirt supposedly of Warren's, blood on the front. Nightcap? Soaked in the back. Investigators are starting to get a bit suspicious. Coroner Eugene Norton and Dr. J.W. Dreyer, Aurora doctor, are already thinking this was a hoax. Had Warren been beaten on his head with a club as was thought, the bloodstains would be on the back of the nightshirt to match the blood on the nightcap. But even though some are thinking of crying foul, the hunt for his body continues because we need the evidence. A woman living near Warren's house saw a car coming from the direction of his house 2 o'clock Monday morning, and she told police she could hear 2 people arguing in the car as they sped away towards a factory building, the site of the search that morning. Nothing was found. May 8th. Police Chief Michaels is now fronting the theory that Warren was kidnapped and maybe not murdered. Why? Apparently, witnesses said they saw Warren the day he disappeared getting onto a train under protest with a woman and 2 men. Interesting. So it's been a month. We're at June 12th. And whoa, Nelly, what's happened? Warren's been found alive. Actually, he returned to the area on his own and told Sheriff Orr a sordid tale of kidnapping, drug rings, and smuggling from Chicago to New York City. Wow! Lena's still missing, but according to Warren, she was a main component of his kidnapping. 3 weeks prior to his disappearance, he claimed that 2 people were following him. A week before, 2 men approached him in his greenhouse, saying they were revenue men and they wanted him for peddling drugs. Warren said, quote, "When I denied this, they took several packages from the wall of the greenhouse, which I had never seen before, and they said they contained drugs. Then they said if I could give them money, they would let me off, and thinking that I could gain time so that I could have them arrested, I said I would pay them. Finally, I determined to have them arrested, and the Sunday night I disappeared, I talked to Captain Grass and Aurora about them. I was hardly asleep when I heard a noise. I investigated and was attacked. When I came to, I was lying on a flower bed in the greenhouse, and my wife was wiping the blood from my nose. They took me to an automobile and started towards Geneva, blindfolding me." End quote. So the group traveled for several hours, and he believed himself to be in Chicago because of the sound of very heavy traffic. He was walked down into what he thought was a basement apartment for more than 3 weeks, his wife visiting him daily. He was, quote, "attacked, blackmailed, kidnapped, and tortured," end quote. Apparently, the apartment was the headquarters of a drug ring. He was asked if he wanted to join, feeling this could be an opportunity to somehow escape. He said, sure. The group was then going to go to Baltimore. When they arrived in Buffalo for a stop, Warren ran while the guy watching him was sleeping. He made it to New York City, where he found some friends, and he wrote to his brother Edward to send him money so he could come home. The sheriff is looking into his story and has not dropped the case just yet. Now, though, he had claimed to have been in Baltimore, New York, Buffalo, and Chicago. The police said that marks on Warren's clothes indicated he had been in Denver. Now, why do they think that? I'm shrugging right now. I never saw it explained. I'm assuming he was not wearing a t-shirt that said, "I've been to Denver, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt." Quote, some strange men accused me of peddling dope. They threatened me, and so I paid them $200 before notifying Aurora police. Then they kidnapped me and took me to Chicago in an automobile. I was kept in a basement in Chicago 3 weeks and then taken east. I jumped off the train at Buffalo and went to Baltimore and New York, from where I wrote to my brother for enough money to return to Chicago. End quote. Warren had written to Sheriff Orr to meet Warren in Chicago at a hotel. More than 200 capsules of morphine were found in Warren's pockets. Oh, really? Morphine, you say? Sheriff Orr thinks the morphine has, well, messed up Warren a bit. Warren's story over the course of about 24 hours has changed several times. Quote, we've washed our hands of this case, end quote, the sheriff said Wednesday. Quote, we're not looking for anyone, end quote. Allegedly, Warren is staying with his brother and will be taken to a sanitarium for a bit of rest. Now, you may ask yourself, isn't there someone you should be looking for, Sheriff Orr? And you may ask yourself, have you forgotten a couple of people? And you may ask yourself, why does this sound fishy? And you may ask yourself, why is our storyteller sounding like she's about to sing a Talking Heads song? Worthwhile questions, all of them. Well, we're going to snooze for several months here, 7 months to be exact. Have you tightened your seatbelts yet? Okay. In January 13th, 1924, Warren has confessed to what, you may ask? To lying? To ransacking his own abode? To leaving out stuff everywhere to throw off a scent? Well, he confessed to killing his wife by beating her over the head. On January 10th, 1923, a year earlier, he beat his wife over the head to her death, dismembered her body, and burned it. Remember that her family hadn't seen her since that January? Yeah. And her brother, Byron? Warren dismembered and burned it too. However, he states that Lena shot her brother to death. Warren just politely dealt with the cleanup. Warren stayed at the house until April 30th, then decided to leave, reappearing around June 10th with this cockamamie story. Get out your notepads. I mean, not really, but it gets a little squirrely. So last we saw Warren, he was back home, hanging out with his bro in mid-June. 4 months later, Warren disappeared when word had come to him that he was suspected of having done something nefarious to his wife and her brother. 2 weeks ago, in early January 1924, Aurora police had told the Associated Press they wanted to find Lincoln to ask him some more questions. Warren had applied for a job in Chicago. The police got his address from that and swooped in. He was arrested and confronted with charges. Quote, I'm glad to get that off my soul, end quote. Well, you could have just said all this a year ago, dude. Quote, I suspected my wife of being untrue to me, end quote, Lincoln said, after the detailed confession had been made and he was returned to his cell. Quote, many times she tried to poison me. I saw the man with whom she had been associating leave my house. That started the final quarrel. I saw fire gleam from her eyes. She fired 3 times at Byron, who had upbraided her for being unfaithful to me and trying to kill me. Each bullet struck him in the head. He fell, and I grabbed a poker. First, I knocked the gun from her hand. Then I swung for her head. She fell dead. I cut up their bodies and burned the next night. End quote. He enjoyed seeing that the police believed him to be murdered as he traveled around. He put in several personal ads into newspapers, signing them with his wife's name. He wrote letters to his wife's relatives under his wife's name, asking them for money. Signed a check with Byron's name at a bank where Byron had a lot of money. Every ad posting he put forth, every letter he wrote, was used using a typewriter with a green ribbon. This was how they were able to tag him for Lena's murder. If it's accepted as is per his supposed confession, he has a case of self-defense. If it's not, the state will need to get evidence to demand punishment for Warren. The police are back at the home, which is under guard, as they investigate the ash pile where the remains of Lena and Byron are allegedly held. So as mentioned, he had made several different confessions, among them declaring that his wife had shot her brother and then committed suicide. Later, he made another confession that he had slain both his wife and her brother in self-defense, and still later said that he killed his wife in self-defense after his wife had killed Shoup. Well, we're now at January 26, 1924. It's been a couple of weeks, and the heads of the dead Lena and her brother, have now been found in a local dump as Warren led detectives to its location. He initially had created a concrete block, which he put the heads in, and put this block under a corner of his porch to keep the porch up as it was sagging, multitasking. Then he decided to remove the block the previous May, and he put it in the local dump. Now he's being officially arrested for first-degree murder. He did confess to killing both Lena and Byron, finally after having only confessed to his wife's murder and that she had killed her brother. Upon the breaking of the block, Warren allegedly swooned. Really, dude? You killed them both and chopped their bodies up and burned them, but now you're swooning? So he's taken back and subjected to a 3-hour grilling. The police think the torsos were actually buried somewhere, not burned. And Warren killed them both with a gun. There was no beating anyone to death. He gave his motive, which no one believed, and it had to do with him catching his wife and her brother doing stuff. What the police do think is that he wanted Byron's $25,000 estate. January 28th. Oh dear. Well, Warren's now being looked into for possibly killing his first wife over 10 years ago. The couple had come back home from a party and she seemed perfectly fine, and then she allegedly took an overdose of headache medicine and died. This happened to be while Warren was working in the post office with a lady who would be his future wife by the name of Lena. Then a large unit of a man whose body was found near Lincoln's home, sans feet and some burnt features. Well, did Lincoln do it? Oh, and if that wasn't enough, a young married woman has stated in Chicago that Warren had wanted to marry her after both had gotten their respective divorces. I'll just save you having to note these to see what happened with these later. Nothing that I could find. Sorry, I'm just as disappointed as you. But yikes, dude, slow your roll. Dr. Joseph Spring, chief coroner's physician of Cook County, talked with Warren for an hour and believed the man should be put into an asylum rather than placed on trial. January 29th. It's said that Warren, who you'll remember is a former attorney, has been speculated to have rather enjoyed watching his neighbors and the police just kerfuffled by all the clues he had left around and thinking everyone was quite stupid. It was his impatience that brought everything to light. February 12th. John Lincoln, 20-year-old son of Warren, has been booked as an accessory today in the murders. This came about after Lena's skull had been examined to show that not only had it been fractured by a blunt force object, but also the bullets that Warren said he had fired from his gun. I guess the police believe that Warren could not have done both actions himself. I don't know why he couldn't have done both actions, so we've hop, skip, jumped to October 7th now. Jury is being finalized today for his "Is he sane or not?" trial, and testimony will begin soon. Warren is allegedly going to be a witness and speak to the killings. The defense wants him to be seen as insane. Warren himself wants the jury to believe him sane. Allegedly, at this point, he's made at least 9 different confessions, and it's anyone's guess as to which confession, or if it will be a brand new story, he will tell on the stand. Witness number 1 will be Warren's older brother, Edward, who will tell the story of Warren's growing up to show that the man had always been a bit odd, and there is a family history of insanity. John, a younger brother to Warren, not his son, but the brother and son are near in age, will state that he believes his brother insane. At least 4 or 5 alienists will also testify on behalf of the defense. Now, I had no idea what an alienist was, but apparently this is a psychiatrist who leans on the legal side of their specialty. Prosecution wants to speak to Warren's law career and his horticulturing, and to prove that he was mentally sound at the time of the murders. Man, I wish this trial was on TV to watch. October 15th. Warren, seemingly bored by the goings-on of his own trial, turned to a nearby journalist and wanted to talk about the current political situation. A journalist asked, "Who will you vote for president?" Warren did not hesitate to state, "Coolidge." I'm sure Coolidge appreciated the vote. October 16th. Well, he's been found sane by the jury after deliberating an hour and a half and only taking 1 ballot. December 9th. Apparently, the defense is contending that the jury panel was not appropriately selected and they want a dismissal. January 15th, 1925, full whole murder trial was supposed to begin today, but Warren wants a change of venue because he believes the judge is prejudiced. Well, he got a different judge assigned. January 25th, 1925, trial has finally begun. Warren has absolutely no intention of pleading guilty. If he pleads guilty, he'll get life in prison and not death. If he pleads not guilty and goes through with the trial, he could be sentenced to death. He stated, quote, "I'm innocent, I'll be freed. Nope, I want to tell my story," end quote. State Attorney Charles Abbott said, quote, "Evidence will show that Lincoln did everything to hide his crime. Why he even wrote Lena's relatives that she had run away to Seattle with a man and at that time he had sealed her lips in death. Just think, gentlemen of the jury, he besmirched her memory and accused her of unchastity after her body had been hacked to bits," end quote. January 30th. Well, now the trial is getting to the gross stuff. One of the witnesses was the man who had to chisel the heads out of the concrete block, doctors who had to examine those heads, and the undertakers who had to keep the heads preserved. And then, hey, let's bring in the concrete blocks as a state's exhibit, without the heads. So then those doctors were brought as witnesses because the defense wanted them to state that the fractures on the head could have caused the deaths to try to show that Lincoln cannot be proved to have actually killed the couple, as he allegedly shot them, not beat them. February 6th. Defense rests after its last witness, one Dr. S.W. Wilgus, expressed his opinion that Warren was insane. He did have to admit on cross-examination that Warren could have deceived him over the year that he's been in question, but, quote, "not all the time," end quote. Quote, "By all the known tests, Lincoln proved up a perfect case of dementia praecox, paranoid type," end quote. Dr. H.T. Holbert of Aurora, testifying for the defense, said that, quote, "Lincoln's delusion that he had been betrayed, his immense self-pity, and complete lack of remorse for what he had done established that he is insane," end quote. State had witnesses to rebut, stating that Warren seemed just fine to them. State will bring additional witnesses in before closing out their side of things. February 10th. Warren's been sent to prison for life for murder of his wife. No indication as of yet if they will try him for Shoup yet, Byron Shoup, and I could find nothing in future papers about that. Warren's attorneys do not appear to intend to ask for an appeal. Warren appeared calm at the reading of the verdict, comforting his son. John, his son, as far as I could tell, was not actually charged with anything either. Remember, they thought he might have been an accessory. So Warren would languish in prison for the rest of his days. He might have been able to get away with it if he hadn't decided to show himself to police. Please like and subscribe. I'm getting decimated and destroyed by the YouTube algorithm, so would love it if you could throw some love to my little channel. Thank you.